Hi everyone. So I did come into the college today just to teach my 8 a.m. class, but as you can probably hear, I'm a little sick, so I'm going home. I'm going to post this video. It's just going to be a quick lecture about menu styles, as well as we are going to be looking into some of the different styles of menus. Let me get rid of my gum. A couple things. I was going to have some brain teasers, but they're not nearly as fun without you guys in front of me, so we won't be doing that. And I've also attached a discerning diners report into Blackboard. Basically, what it is talks about what do diners in our industry care about. So number one is word of mouth, building a customer database. So this is preferring email promotions versus social media promotions. Having signature items. So when it comes to choosing a table service restaurant, a signature item has a really big sway on if that particular person wants to go there. Making an easy decision. So quick service restaurants, convenience and value are the most important factor for that particular diner to go to those places. 75% of people have consumers use their phones and or the web to look at the menus. So when you think about if you have an outdated website, old photos, or it just doesn't look user friendly, 75% of your potential customers are going to look at that before they come. So if they do that and they don't like what they see, that may impact how many people actually show up. Number 6 is 50% of Canadians read online reviews by customers. So when you think about that, again, before people are coming to your restaurant, 75% of them are looking at your menu, 50% of them are looking at their reviews, and if anything does not look good, that's going to be an issue for your place. And 50% of the customers use their smartphones to do those two things, the website and the online reviews. And then 8 through 10, use technology wisely. So as table technology has really kind of grown in the last few years, a lot of iPad menus and a lot of QR codes are really coming out. Use it where it makes sense. So iPad menus are of interest to about 40% of restaurant goers under 35. Only 10% of consumers over 50 care. So it's really not a big deal for a lot of them. They're not looking for it. But there's not that many people who hate it either. So they'll use it, but it's not really an added value. So if you're spending a lot of money on like iPad menus, it might not be worth it. More than 50% of Canadians wish that restaurants served all-day breakfast. 60% of Canadians aged 18 to 34 want all-day breakfast. So if you have the ability to cook that kind of stuff, it might make sense for your menu for breakfast to go later on into the day. And it takes deep discounts to change behavior. So when discounts are over 20%, most consumers will eat at off-peak hours. So, it's common that, let's say, 6 to 9 p.m. is the ideal dining time for a lot of these casual sit-down restaurants. They won't, if there's a 10% discount to come in at 4:30 or a 10% discount to eat after 9 o'clock, that won't really do it for them. But if there's something over 20%, they might do that. Our margins are so tight that once you give away 20% of your revenue, it doesn't really make sense anymore. So when you're thinking of doing different promotions, trying to bring in more people, you really have to look at, what kind of promotion will you have to do to encourage those kind of people. So types of menus. So there's a lot of different types of menus that you can choose from. Primarily, they're influenced by the food service operation or the style of service and the needs of the customers. So there's a few that we should go over, and these are the ones that we see most often. So a la carte, that's the majority of all places. They're individually priced entrees, appetizers, mains, whatever you might have, with a short narrative of the menu item and not prepared until ordered. So that's probably 80% of all of the restaurants you go to. Static menu is a menu that's used each day. It must remain on the menu for more than 1 year to be considered a static menu or static menu item. And a menu can have both static options and non-static options. So you'll see most menus are a la carte, most menus are static menus, and sometimes they'll have maybe a panel that they'll slide in and out of the menu, which are seasonal features, specials, things like that. A single use menu is a menu specifically planned to use only once. Usually, like a party menu might be this way, where they choose, 3 different options that they can choose from, which is also could be called a table d'eau. So table d'eau menus can sometimes be a single-use menu or not. It all depends. GDR is a table d'eau menu, which means every single day they come in, those are the options that they can choose from. It's at a fixed price, $10 for an appetizer, entree, and dessert. Single use is more so for those holiday parties, those one-off events, but is in fact still a table d'eau menu. De jour menu is a menu of the day, and a cycle menu is a carefully planned set of menus that we rotate at different time intervals. So it could be throughout the day. We often see this in long-term care, retirement homes, hospitals, a lot of the non-commercial, where they'll have a full week of menus, and then they'll have maybe 3 different sets of weekly menus. So they'll go through, Monday, the first Monday of the week is bologna sandwiches, the next Monday is turkey, and the third Monday is a chicken club, and then they go back to the bologna, and they just keep cycling through those. And there's buffet menus, which is sometimes not even an actual menu, more so than a display, but it's a form of table d'eau menus that offers all the selections at one set price. So as you will see throughout this, there are a la carte menus and table d'eau menus that also can combine other parts to it. A California menu is a menu that offers everything on it 24 hours a day. And then there's the extent of selection. So the selection basically just goes into talking about when and how can you choose these options. So a selective menu is a menu that includes 2 or more food choices in each menu category, such as appetizers, entrees, vegetables, salads, and desserts. A semi-selective includes 1 or more food choices in at least 1 menu category. So it's like not really that many things. So some of the party menus might be a semi-selective menu where you have a choice of a salad and an entree, but only 1 option for dessert. So that would be a semi-selective menu. A selective one might be choose 1 of these 3 appetizers, 1 of these 3 entrees, and 1 of these 3 desserts. And a non-selective is just basically showing them what they will be eating for that day. This is a menu testing form. So this is really what you should be doing. And we don't see this enough, and we really should do more. You should bring out these testing forms for all of the new appetizers, entrees, desserts, whatever you might have, for all of your staff before you actually put it on your menu. So most new menu items are done through specials. They might bring it out for a little while, but at the same time, you also should have a testing. So you want to test maybe with a couple of your regulars or maybe your staff because they know the place well. And what they will do is they'll look at all the different options that are currently out there or the new options that could be used. They will, on a scale of 1 to 5, say what is the ranking. So in flavor, texture, and appearance, maybe give some commentary on what they like or didn't like, and then here they'll add it to the menu, yes or no. And it's wise to test menu items before adding them. So as I said, use it as a special. You can use it as customer participation. You can offer smaller portions to customers in bar. Specifically, this is really useful as let's say you have a waiting list on a Friday or Saturday. People are at the door, they're sitting around the bar, they're waiting for a table in the dining room. That's a perfect opportunity to not only make these people happy, because when you're waiting for food and you get hungry, you get hangry, and you get a little upset. So if you offer them a small portion of food, not only will they be happy, they don't mind waiting, but you also might be able to get some good feedback about if they like that or not. So that might be one of the new things where or a thing that you can do is that you bring out these food portions, these smaller tasting portions, and you ask them to comment on it and would they pay for it, what do they feel about it, what would be a good price range, and you could really find out some good information. So that's essentially the menu layouts that there are. There's some very specific ones, there's like bar menu items, there's oyster menus, but they're all a form of what we just looked at. The menu design has a much bigger component to the success of a menu than the style of selection of menu. So whether it be table d'hote or party or whatever it might be, buffet. Now, when we think about menus, we just often relate it to food, but we forget like the major component or a major component in the revenue generation of a restaurant is beverage. And sales-wise, they're often 60 to 40, 70 to 30, as far as 70% of your sales comes from food and 30% comes from beverage. But when you look at a bar versus a kitchen, in the kitchen, you might have 10 staff throughout a day, 3 in the daytime, 4 in the daytime, 6 at night on a busy day. And that's in the bar side, you might have 2 maybe, a day bartender, a night bartender. So what costs you 10 employees' labor's worth to make 70% of the sales, you might be able to make 30% of those sales with 2 people. Plus, the cost per drink is often much lower than the cost per full meal and equipment. This is where you can make your money. So I'm not saying you put more effort into the menu layout, but just as much as you would with any kind of food menu. And this is often where people kind of slack. So there are major players in the industry, and it's kind of crazy, actually, the beverage industry a little bit. So first of all, there's the Alcohol and Gaming Commission of Ontario, AGCO. Remember these things for the test. They handle all legality with the service and purchase of alcohol. They run the Smart Serve operation, the OLG, Ontario Lottery and Gaming, and they're kind of the big dog. Beer store, LCBO, wine shops, wine racks, these are the institutions that the government of Ontario have long-standing deals with. They are the main purveyor of alcohol, although you will see some other units start coming out. So you'll have your brew pubs and your actual wineries that are able to sell their own product. And that's a specific type of license they have. And then you have the big players in the industry. So Molson's is one, Labatt's is one, Sleeman and Sapporo, which is like the same company, they're another one. That's in beer. But if you were alcohol, you would look at Diageo is a really big one. There's a lot of larger wine conglomerates that own a lot of the wineries. And these are the big players, and they are the ones who really kind of dictate where all the marketing is. There's also been a lot of revisions to the liquor laws in Ontario. So now you can order drinks at 9 a.m. You are now able to advertise happy hour and cheap drinks. So before you weren't able to say cheap, you weren't able really to say the words happy hour in relation to drinks. You could say happy hour appetizers, but not drinks, because what the idea is that you are trying to promote drinking as much alcohol within a certain amount of time as possible. So as of April 2019, sales of alcohol can operate now at big box companies, gas stations, and grocery stores. We've seen this. They still operate under the responsibility of the LCBO. So the same rules apply, and the LCBO still makes that money. Consumption of alcohol is now allowed in public spaces and parks, even farmers markets, and tailgating events, such as maybe at like a football game, is now legal and alcohol can be served. So LCBOs they have 660 full size and 220 convenience size locations. They made $2.12 billion last year. Now the great thing about LCBO, it's owned by the Ontario government. So the revenue actually goes back into our government. It doesn't go overseas, it doesn't go anywhere else. It stays local. It might not get to exactly where we think it should be, but it's often reinvested into healthcare, infrastructure, and education. Up until lately, the LCBO had a handshake deal with the beer store that they were not able to sell 2-4s or bigger, 24 packs, 30 packs, but now they are allowed to. And all grocery stores and big box retailers that sell alcohol buy it through the LCBO. So there was 450 locations. I'll be honest, this is probably like at least a year old, this slide. So I'm assuming you're probably closer to 600 locations at this point of the LCBOs within stores. The beer store is owned by not Canadians, believe it or not. So it's 51% ownership. I think this math might be a little wrong. It's 51% ownership by Molson Coors. I think it was 44% ownership by Labatt's, which is a Belgian company. 4% ownership by Sleeman Sapporo, and then 1% is on the Ontario Craft Breweries, and that was gifted to the Ontario Craft Breweries, essentially just because they were complaining and they didn't have their own representation. So there are over 450 beer stores. They are the main supplier of our industry for beer. You cannot buy a keg out of the LCBOs. So all the draft beer is gone through or goes through the beer store. Only 1% of the profit stays in Ontario. So that's kind of the issue that we're looking at now, where LCBO, at least, I always shop at LCBO, not necessarily because I'm worried about where the money goes, but also because of, you get just about everything there. But when you think about that, 99% of the profit from the beer store goes out of this country. That doesn't really make a lot of sense. And just a lot of brands that Molson owns. So Molson's one of the big guys, and of course we understand like Coors and Miller Lite and Canadian, Blue Moon. These are all fairly common brands, but they have quite a bit more. I think well over 100. So the problem. So craft beers are fantastic. A lot of people carry craft beer in their building. It's great. Law states that you can't only carry one brand of beer. You have to have at least 2 brands of beer on your draft lines. And no one can buy your draft lines, which means Labatt's can't own your draft lines. They can be changed throughout the year to different types. But they've kind of got around that rule. Because before, when I was in the industry, they basically owned our restaurant, where Labatt's and Molson's each owned 50% of our tap lines, and they each gave us money for the amount that we sold. But we couldn't take it off because we started relying on that money, and it was a lot. So major beer companies can offer you kickbacks. So dollars amount per keg or case purchase. So $5 case, $50 we got for a keg. So we would sell, about 15 kegs in a week. And if you do the math, that's $750 that we would get a week from the beer companies. So that could buy us almost 3 kegs of beer. We often used it as promotional. So we'd pay for DJs or live bands. We'd pay for Jays or Leafs tickets or, swag and stuff like that. You can also use it for coasters and glassware. We made so much money the one year we bought a new pizza oven for our kitchen. Technically, this is illegal, but they're able to get it done. Craft beer and smaller operators. So, in town we have Flying Monkeys, which is actually fairly larger internationally than they are here. Barnstormers, the one I designed, Redline Brewhouse, I always forget the name. They're small. They can't offer $50 a keg because that's all of their profit. They don't make 10 million liters at a time. They make 500 liters at a time. So it's one of those things that they literally just cannot compete against. So if you're a restaurant owner, you have a bar, you sell a lot of beer, are you going to pay $300 for a keg or pay the equivalent of $250 for a keg? For a well-known brand like a Coors Light versus a craft beer, which might not be well-known. It's really a disadvantage for a lot of these craft brewers to try to get into restaurants. And moving on. So some of the tips and tricks for drink menus. So when you're looking at drink menus, you want to, again, have those lists. There's a lot of different options of things that you can do, using graphics, using color, using different schemes. You can see here, and I won't go into too much detail, but this one right here, this saloon, has this drink menu. So this probably folds out in a couple different ways. They have their premium beers, and they're all a little offset. They all have their branding, because branding is what sells. Fat Tire, the Firestone, Bud Light, Budweiser, the 1554, and this Apricot Ale. And then they have all the different margaritas. And again, they're kind of offsetting everything a little bit just to kind of make this have a different flow. They throw in some icons, but these aren't actual pictures of the drinks. So they don't need to look like that every time. But they do understand beers, cocktails, or margaritas and cocktails. Same thing here. So this is a wine list that they have with a bunch. It's more or less the same context as a regular menu. So they have their major heading, they have their subheading, which is the name of the item, and then they have a descriptor as well. So here they've gone through all the different wines that they have in this particular place, which is nice. You know, it could be the same for a coffee house, your coffees, your hot drinks, your frozen drinks, your smoothies. Now, these are really small menus. It's more just an example of what you could do, but it gives you an idea of how these menus can be created. Every beverage, let's try that again. Every beverage menu should have the following: both a draft and bottle list. So some people just like drinking draft beer. It doesn't last as long. You probably won't have, you'll sell more draft beer than bottle beer historically. That's usually what seems to be. And you'll make more money off draft beer. But typically it's about a week once you tap that keg. You might get 2 weeks out of it. That's kind of pushing it. So usually about 2 weeks, let's say maximum, that you tap that keg where it's not fresh anymore. So bottles have up to a 6-month shelf life. So it's easier to carry bottles. It's not as cost effective because you're paying for the individual bottle, you're paying for the deposit, and you get 144 beers in a keg. And it's quite a bit less per ounce or per bottle. Promote draft because bottles are more costly and not as fresh. You also should offer a variety of wines, but not too many. So true bars usually only offer 3 to 4 reds and whites, maybe a blush or sparkling by the glass. So you may offer as many as you want in a bottle form because they have a long shelf life, more so red than white wine. But when you start offering more than 3 to 4 glasses or wines by the glass, you do run into the problem of where somebody might order a glass of red wine, and then no one might order that same kind of wine for a week. In a week, now that you've opened that bottle of wine, that red is no longer good. So there is some inventory control that you have to be careful of. You know, if you're going to offer or buy a guest a glass of wine, maybe you start using the stuff that you know in a day or two is not going to be that good. If you're a manager, if you're having a glass of wine or even just an employee, you might want to push to see if you can, drink the wine while it's still good versus when it goes bad and you have to pour it out. You might be able to use it for cooking, but even still, it's tainted a little bit. So that's why you don't want to offer too many, because you might just end up with, if you offer 7 bottles of red by the glass, you might end up with 3 or 4 of those not selling quick enough and not remaining fresh. Most bars are stocked and can make any drink. So they always have like kind of the 5 basic, the rye, rum, gin, vodka, rye, rum, gin, vodka, tequila. And then you should have signature drinks. So yeah, people that they know what they want, they'll come up and order what they want. So if they know they like a gin and soda, you don't really need to have a gin and soda on the menu. They know that. Rather, what you probably want to do is develop signature cocktails, because these sell the most on your menu. They're usually colorful, delicious. Once you start seeing them go around the restaurant, more people will order them. And it's signature, so the customer feels that you can only get them there. Also make sure to include some of our non-alcoholic drinks, because we love our sober friends and we want their business as well. And you can make some really good money off this stuff as well. Okay. So cocktails, beer, you get an idea of how you do that. Now what we'll be doing as well is that we'll be looking at Canva. So Canva is kind of great because it's a free design. There's 3 main elements that you should be aware of, but there's a lot more than that. So the first one is the templates, and then there's the elements, and then the text. And those are the ones that we'll be using mostly. So I will stop this video now. I will have an instructional video on how to use Canva on the next one, and I'll post that just up underneath this one. Cheers.